I'm gonna guess that you clicked on this video for one of three reasons. A, you suck at the game and you're wondering how you can get better. Dude, how am I so bad at this game? Second, you're just wondering, how can I possibly beat demons quicker and easier? Yo, I beat the nightmare. It only took me 5,000 attempts. Let's go. Or three, you're just wondering if there's any way possible that you can get better at the game quicker, possibly beat demons faster, and overall make them more enjoyable. So coming in at the number 10 spot, we have practice mode. Now when I say practice mode, I'm not talking about just playing through the level, I'm talking about you actually want to use it to your advantage. Now how do you do that? So when you go in practice, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to practice through the level as if normal, and you want to see if there's any possible parts that you can practice. Maybe there's a part that you struggle with going through that might cause a choke point, or you just want to get more consistent at a certain part. If that's the case, you want to put your checkpoint down there and practice it over and over again until you can do it pretty consistently. Another way that you can use practice is from playing the level backwards. Now, you're probably wondering why you would want to do that. So, what I mean by playing the level backwards is you want to literally practice to the end of the level, or you can make a copyable, whatever the case may be, and then you want to start at the end of the level, and you want to slowly remove checkpoints until you're able to slowly get rid of them to the point where you can do whole sections easily and consistently. And it also helps to practice it backwards, so that way when your nerves kick in, you are at the most practiced part of the level, which is the end when your nerves spike the most. And considering the end is the most nerve heavy, it's best to have the end the most practiced. I also want to make note of auto checkpoints. I personally don't use them because I find that they can be really unreliable. They can put checkpoints in bad spots. Yo, this is such a bad checkpoint. I literally can't even move. What the hell? They can waste attempts. Whatever the case may be there as well, what I recommend doing is turning those off and getting in the habit of placing checkpoints down, whether that's at each transition, whether that's at each part that you struggle with, whatever it is. You want to have some space in between your checkpoints. You don't want to be just putting them all together, especially if you're playing backwards, because if you have auto checkpoints on, it's going to be placing them so it's in a way that when you get rid of checkpoints, some of them aren't really going to be in the best spots. Like, for example, you might have one checkpoint where, it starts at a transition, but then you go back a checkpoint and you're only like a millimeter away, or you're in front of a spike, meaning that it's a bad checkpoint. Now, for the number 9 spot, I recommend using start positions. Now, when I say start positions, you can just copy a level and put your own start positions down. But what I recommend doing personally is whenever you're looking for a level, you want to just type in the level's name followed by SP. Now, what this basically means, typing that in, most likely you're going to find the first, second, third level, whatever it may be. One of those levels is going to be your level, but with start positions in each perfect transition, whether that's at each 5%, 10%, wherever there's choke points. Usually they're in good spots, but if they're not, you can always put your own down in a copyable and do it yourself. So playing from these start positions, you're able to practice from one part to the next, and you can do them over and over again, build some consistency, and then you can go to other parts and practice those as well, rather than having to practice each level from this part to the next, to the next, to the next. You can just practice whatever you struggle with, and you can go back into it. Like if you're playing through a level and I don't know, let's say you're struggling at 40%, then you can go to the start position at 40%, play it over and over again until you build consistency, so that way when you go back to the level, hopefully you don't die there again. Now for the number 8 spot, I do recommend that you guys play enjoyable levels. Now by this, I don't mean, oh, you play this level, you get sick of it, don't play it. I don't mean that, and I don't mean to just pick all levels that you enjoy and throw all the levels away, because that does not help. So what do I mean by play enjoyable levels? So what I mean is play levels that you feel you could get consistent at with practice. Like, it just feels smooth to play, there's not really bugs, you like the style of gameplay, and the music fits pretty well. Because if you find levels that you don't like, for example, I've had some levels, and I'll put a level up on the screen right now of a good example of one that I did not have fun playing, and you will see that it takes significantly more attempts to beat a level that you do not enjoy than it does to beat a level that you do enjoy. Because if you do enjoy a level, you're more likely to play it more, you're likely to be more motivated to just want to play the level more. Because if you're playing a level less, well, you're gonna have less consistency, you're probably gonna get bored of the game. And speaking of getting bored of the game, that is a reason why most players do not hit that top spot. They play levels, they get demotivated, and they simply just take breaks from the game. And I don't recommend doing that, because that is how you destroy your consistency. If you really want to get good at the game, you gotta play consistently. So that brings me to point number 7, which is, well, play consistently. Obviously, the more you play the game, the better you're going to get, and the more hours you put into the game, the more you're going to get. So whether you play for an hour a day, 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, it doesn't matter, but you want to consistently not only be playing the game, but playing the same levels that you're trying to beat or that you struggle with every day. Even if, I don't know, you have an off day, it's always good to just to go through the level and practice it, just so the level's fresh in your memory. Because if it's fresh in your memory, well, you're going to remember certain parts, you're going to remember certain click patterns, and it's going to be easy moving forward. All right, so now here we are at the number 6 spot. So for number 6, I recommend that you sight read easy levels. So yes, you can use this for practicing daily levels, sight read them, try to beat them without practice, because in the end, you shouldn't really need practice for any level that's under an easy demon when it comes to trying to beat like harder demons like Insanes, Extremes. Even if you're only beating hard demons, I don't really recommend practicing. I would say under an 8-star. I've had some 9 stars where I did actually need to practice, so in that case, it's fair game, go right ahead. But you want to ideally get really good at sight reading, because when it comes to sight reading is the number one thing for timings. So if you see top players beating like, you know, the top levels, you'll see that most of the time it comes down to how quick your input delay is. So if you are sight reading and you click way too late, clearly you need to build a lot more consistency, and you need to train your hand-eye coordination to match up the best that you can. So the way to do that is, instead of practicing and learning the pattern of the level, you just want to sight read a level and then go from there. Even weekly demons. Weekly demons I do recommend practicing. However, sight read even when you're in practice, even if it's a harder demon. To sight read a harder demon, how would you do that? So you go in practice, but you want to put down less checkpoints than you normally would and try to sight read a part. Don't just spam checkpoints through it and try to learn the gameplay. You actually want to look at it and try to predict where it is that you have to click, because the better at this that you get, the better at reading levels you'll get in the future. And then sooner or later, levels will just click. I mean, certain clicks will get easier. You're going to notice certain tech in levels that you may not have had experience with. And another thing too is, if you sight read all the time, you're going to get really good at building consistency in levels, because you're not just going to rely on click patterns, but you're also going to be able to see what's coming up and potentially destroy the point of practicing that part, because you can just do it by default. And I don't know about you, but naturally being able to do parts of levels would 100% make it way easier. Coming in at the number 5 spot, we have the contrary to that, which would be, instead of sight reading easy levels, you want to be practicing hard levels. And when I say hard levels, I don't mean like your next Extreme, your next Insane. No, I'm saying levels that are like way higher than there. And I'm not saying jump. I don't recommend jumping levels unless you feel really confident, and I'll get to that later. But what I recommend is you want to find levels that you feel could be fun to play. Maybe you want to beat one day, but you don't have the skills to beat now, and favorite it. Favorite it, play it on your free time, try to get good at doing hard parts, because this is training your brain to get good at doing hard parts of levels that potentially is easier than all the levels that you're doing currently. But also, when you do decide that you want to go for that level later down the road, it's going to be a lot easier because you already have experience, and considering you have experience on a harder level, it'll make you a lot easier when it comes to playing easier demons. At the number 4 spot, what I recommend doing is playing challenges or certain gameplay levels tied to either a specific game mode or a specific game type that you need to get better at. So what does that mean exactly? So what I mean is, if there's a certain part of a level that perhaps you find uncomfortable to play, or I don't know, there's like a choke point in a level that's just really hard for you to do, whatever that may be, I recommend looking up levels that have to do with that certain gameplay. So let's say you're really bad at the wave. You know, you've been trying to play this certain level, but the wave just seems to be giving you a choke point, or maybe you're bad at robot, UFO, swing, whatever it may be. Look up levels that contain those gameplays or challenges. So for example, if you're bad at the wave, maybe look up levels that have a lot of wave. Not necessarily a level that's like an extreme demon, but whether that's just like a simple user level, you could do like wave challenges, wave layouts I like to type in, because if you type like robot layout, wave layout, you usually get levels that focus on that gameplay. Another thing, like I said, you can look up challenges. You can do wave challenge, robot challenge, whatever the case may be there, and practice those, because playing those from time to time, they're shorter levels, they're fun to play when you're bored, and they get you good at that specific game mode. Now, instead of just game modes, you can look up certain gameplay types as well. So what I mean is you can play like, for example, timings. You can look up like timing layouts, or you can look up like timing challenges, or maybe you're bad at straight fly, so you can practice your straight flying challenges, straight fly layouts. You can practice, you know, anything like that. It just makes it so much easier to practice those and then jump back into a level, because you're just going to be a lot more experienced with that game mode or game type, and it's going to make the demon a lot easier to play. Now, coming in at the number 2 spot, that is go for runs. So if you don't know what runs are, basically you'll be seeing top players, they'll play like 80% to 100, or they'll do like a middle run, like 30% to 80% or something. And what that does is it gets you good at that specific part, so you're less likely to die there when you're in normal mode, because you can already do an extended length of that percentage, and hopefully by then you would be able to do it pretty consistently if you're doing full runs. What I recommend doing when it comes to runs is play through the level as normal, as I mentioned earlier. Use practice, start positions, whatever it is there, and then start going for runs. Now, when it comes to doing runs, you can use practice mode and get rid of checkpoints. Obviously not using auto checkpoints, because if you're doing runs, you're going to want to start from the same place every time. But when it comes to doing runs, I recommend the number one thing is start positions, as I mentioned earlier, because from start positions, you can go from one to the other. Let's say there's a start position at 40%, you have a choke point at 50%, and the next start position that you know of is at 60%. So what you can do is you can practice from the 40% start position up until the 60% start position, and then do it over and over again until you can beat it pretty consistently. And what that does is, instead of just having 50% click pattern in your brain so you don't die there normally, you have the whole part. So you have the part leading up to it, the actual 50% that you struggle with, but then you also have after it as well to help smooth it into the whole gameplay that you're looking to practice. And then when you're good at doing runs like that, you could do bigger runs. You could do like a run from, say, 40 to 70, or maybe you want to do a full 40 to 100 runs. That way you have the whole rest of the level from that point. And then from there, you can do runs like 20 to 40, 20 to 50, and then you can mix them together, ultimately getting you closer to the run of 0 to 100. But obviously, once you get to run maybe like 10% to 100, I recommend just going in normal, unless it's like very choke point heavy in like the first 10%. But overall, I do recommend going backwards, as mentioned earlier, just like the practice method. But yeah, you want to be getting runs down pretty consistently before you jump into the main level. I just want to add a quick point on top of that. When it comes to doing runs, practicing, anything like that, people really worry about the attempt count. But when you worry about the attempt count, that's another thing that you have to worry about in your head, and it's making a lot more pressure on you when it comes to beating the level. Just pretend like attempt counts don't matter. Pretend you're trying to beat the demon in a smaller amount of time, because ultimately time is money. If somebody beats a demon in an hour and it takes them 10k attempts, versus somebody beating a demon in 2 hours but it only takes them 5k attempts, Ultimately, I don't know about you, but I would prefer 10k attempts in an hour because yes, it did take me more attempts, but it took me less overall time to beat the level, which is more important when it comes to top play. Because I see that a lot of people, when it comes to attempt counts, they feel like it makes one person a better player than the other. And I mean, I can see where you're coming from in the fact that less attempts therefore means that it usually would be easier for you to learn a level than it would somebody else, but you got to keep in mind there's different practice methods. Somebody might be, only doing 5k attempts, but they're doing super long runs. Those are really long progress attempts. But then there's other people who practice by, maybe they spam checkpoints, maybe they do small runs, maybe they go back to a part that they struggle with and they just keep doing it over and over again. That's going to cost you a lot more attempts than it is to do a full-length run. So ultimately, the attempt count really depends, so it doesn't really matter as much when it comes to top play, you know what I mean? Ultimately, like I said, it's about building consistency and just ensuring that you're able to learn and beat the level in a timely manner. And for the last tip that I have, at the number one spot and the most important spot in my opinion is looking for click patterns / music sync. Now, I see a lot of people who do maybe every single one of the tips that I've mentioned, but they don't go for this number one tip. So when you play a level, you want to be looking for any patterns that you notice. Like maybe you click this orb to a beat, like let's say the beat is like da 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 da, so then you want to click like da 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 da, right? And you'll notice sometimes with the music, if you can sync it to the beat, it's really consistent, because then instead of relying on what you're looking at, you could actually just click on the same beat every time, making it so you're way less likely to die there. You'll see with top players, they mostly rely on this. It's like the level is so hard itself that you physically can't sight read it, but instead you just need to know the click patterns and the music sync, kind of like any other rhythm game like Friday Night Funkin', Guitar Hero, whatever it is, it's all music sync based. Geometry Dash is no exception. And if you are finding that, the music sync is good and all, but it's still not building the consistency you need because maybe there's certain parts within that beat, like the beginning of the beat or the end, that you could still die to, it's a really hard timing. How do I ensure that I get it every time? What you can do instead is, instead of syncing it to the music, actually sync your clicks itself. So maybe like take your headphones off, take out whatever your input method is, whether that's like a SEO device, keyboard, mouse, whatever it is. Use your input method with your headphones off or sound off, whatever it is, and you want to be listening for the click patterns. So for example, let's say the music sync isn't everything. There's certain parts that maybe I click to the beat, but I still die. So what can I do there? So here's what you can do. When you are playing a level and you're struggling to find music sync, you want to look for something called click sync. So what click sync is, or pattern sync is, you want to just play the level, but instead of listening to the in-game music, listen to when you click on your keyboard, mouse, SEO device, whatever it is. Just whenever you click on the key, listen to it. So if a level is like, for example, Stereo Madness, it's like dun 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 dun. But if you actually play it, you don't go on every beat you click, but instead you'll notice on like, you'll play the level and then you'll go like tap, 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 tap or something, right? Obviously that's not how Stereo Madness is, but in a certain level you might hear like tap, 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 and then you go back, tap, 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 and you do it over and over again. And then instead of listening to the music, you just listen to your keys. You're like, okay, this part I know it's tap, 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 not instead of tap, 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 tap. You're tapping at different times, right? But if you listen to when you're tapping and how spaced out each clicks are, you can use that to your advantage, and you can try to click within the same intervals that you did last time. If you have the music blaring in your ears and you can't hear your own clicks, you might click at different times, your clicks might not line up, you might zone out. Any of those might happen and it can ruin your runs completely. But knowing click patterns are just as beneficial as music sync in my opinion. So please, please, please do not put that aside. Make sure that you do focus on your click patterns. It helps a lot, especially with top play. Now, I don't beat top levels myself, but I see it a lot when I watch streamers beating like the hardest of demons, whether that's like Amethyst, Thinking Space, 2, you know, anything like that. I see that they all do it. But with that being said, guys, that in my opinion is the top 10 best ways that you can get better at the game, and these are my personal ways that I practice levels and I beat them as quick as I possibly can. But if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know down below if any of these have helped you, and if you have any questions about any of these, feel free to let me know. I will be answering all the comments that anyone has on this video. And without further ado, I just want to thank you all for coming out. Good luck beating your demons. So with that, peace out, and I'll see you all in the next video, everyone. Have a great day.